Thank you all for joining us on this great discussion on how to help nonprofits secure funding. We have a great team here. Rick, who is a philanthropy advisor and supports nonprofits and family organizations and corporations and offers guidance for getting donations and good funding. Mark is a strong CFO who works at To Go Advisory Group, but he's also on nonprofits and has good experience, and he'd like to share some insights there. And Jeff is a member of the To Go Group's practice group for all things governance related. And so we're going to share some of the insights from these three great gentlemen in helping take a look at what works and what doesn't work and giving some advice going forward. So with that in mind, Rick, let's start with you. Could you show a little bit about how you assess about whether a nonprofit is even qualified and ready to get funding? What keys or factors do you consider that potential funders evaluate to decide whether it's worth it?
Well, it's a great question. It's actually a loaded question. There's a lot of things that I will do with a nonprofit to sit down and say, are you funding ready? I'll start with things like, do you have a good case for support? Are you clear about who you are and what you're striving for, what your challenges are, what your solutions are that you're proposing, how much money you're looking to raise, which is often built off of a strategic plan, which is done obviously with the board. But then the case for support has to be strong. It also has to be, they have to have a clear gift acceptance policy. What is that like?
Mhm.
And do people know how they can give and what they can give? So the donors are going to be looking at, can I just give cash, or could I give real estate? Could I give securities? Could I give retirement plan money? Can I give from my donor advised fund? Can I give cryptocurrency? What can I give? So, and then there's a database which is integral to the marketing piece. So if they're getting good marketing or if they're getting good engagement, it's probably because they have good systems in place. So this is all to say that maybe the individual, the donor, isn't coming in and saying, let's go through the checklist, kind of like I just did, but they do know good cultivation or stewardship when they see it. And they also know that there is good governance and good management and good strategy around what's happening. And they know that because they've seen it in other organizations that they have usually given substantive money to. In other words, they're using that as their gauge for everything else. And the last thing I'll say is, again, behind the scenes, a donor wouldn't necessarily see this, but good board governance in the sense of, is the board cohesive? Do they support fundraising? Do they have, in the case of a capital campaign, do they have a capital campaign committee that's leading the charge and moving that forward? So these are things that might not be overt, but they are things that I think that donors notice either through good marketing or good, just messaging in general that can make a big difference on whether or not a donor makes a substantive gift to an institution.
Now, Mark, you've been on nonprofits. What would you say are the things from the board side that makes a difference on donorship?
Yeah, well, about the number five comes to my mind right now, Donna. The first, and some of this is repetitious to what Rick just stated. The mission of the organization should always be preserved, and a donorship and the board should ensure that that mission is ongoing, that it does not fluctuate, if you will, and also very well articulated. The second one would be the board should demonstrate good board governance. And I don't say that in a generic way. As Rich has indicated, a donor, fundraiser, people want to make sure that, he used the word stewardship. That's spot on, to ensure that if money is received, that there will be good board governance. And then not just from a monetary point of view, philosophy, good internal controls, I would say from an operational perspective. Third one would be stable leadership. If you have an executive director or president or chair, floating door, if you will, not very well received at times because it's hard to stay on mission if your leadership is constantly changing. The fourth would be strong financial management practices, including audited financial statements. Now, certain organizations are too small to audit. We get that. But if there's a sizable fund, a fundraising activity, organizations want to make sure that there is someone who is externally looking at it. It could be just a strong finance committee or strong audit committee, but still want to document that that is well done, and that depending on the size of the organization, that is a well understood 990. And a 990 form is just a IRS requirement, but generally that is required to make sure that the organization indicates and publishes and is transparent. And the last one I would say is this demonstrate just good grant process. If there, has the organization gone out externally other than just from a donor management perspective?
Yeah. Rick, have you got an example of a nonprofit that was struggling and why?
Yeah, actually, it's a very timely example. I am working with a nonprofit just this week I wouldn't call their board imploding, but there's something very strange going on, which is we have been steadily building up for a capital campaign of around $10 million. And while we thought that everything was going well at the board level, up to and including a board presentation earlier this month to the full board, there has been strange things happening on the board where they're sort of undermining the process and going to each other secretly and saying, I'm not sure about this capital campaign. I'm not sure it's going to work. And it's starting to crumble and it's not good. And the executive director is not happy about it. And she's actually so angry, she's actually considering leaving.
Oh,
Okay,
dear.
that's pretty bad. But
Yeah.
that's to me is not great board governance, not for lack of trying, by the way, but it's almost like there's certain personalities on the board that are doing things in a very secretive and kind of gossipy way that is, I think, going to actually have a very detrimental effect on what happens next with fundraising. So it's a very timely example.
I'll bet. Now, Jeff, looking at the boards today, what can the governance group do to help in cases of board strength and qualification for funding?
Absolutely. And Rick, thanks for sharing that. But certainly, what I would start with is we could certainly do an initial assessment of the board, who's on it, how are they interacting with each other, with the executive director, with management. And for me, my board experience is really, and what we can offer is it really comes down to people. And Rick, what you were just talking about was it tells me that there are probably the wrong people on that board. I mean, we can identify high quality board members who support a nonprofit's mission and values. And in my experience, that's been key. I certainly believe strongly in strategic planning, in an auditor review is almost imperative, in terms of, the donors want their grant money to, where's it going? How is it going to be accounted for? And that type of thing. But, and so structure is important, audit committees, grant committees, it's got to be organized well, but it really comes down to the people. And that's certainly something we can help with, and certainly help on the fundraising side too, obviously in conjunction with you, Rick. But we've got a lot of firepower within our company to be able to assess, to hire, to structure for sure.
Rick, how do you determine what the right combination of the right donor for one versus another? How do you match them?
How do you match a donor to a nonprofit well?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say there's two things going on. One is all the things we just talked about with good board governance and good nonprofit governance and preparation and strategy and so on. There's that kind of getting them ready for battle, so to speak, right? And then on the other side, it's having a completely different kind of conversation with the donors and their families and saying, let's start with what is important to you. What are your values as either individuals or as family members? What are the issue areas that you care about? Also, how do you think about money? Do you think about it as something that you don't deserve this money? You inherited it, or did you earn it yourself as a first generation practitioner or business person? And then also, do you want to bring your family in? And so on. So it's almost like that's a more high level discussion. And then we can get into more tactical stuff, which is to say, what type of asset would you like to donate? What type of charitable giving vehicle would you like to consider? And then ultimately, which nonprofits would you like to fund? And usually then you're getting down to some criteria around how are you evaluating these particular nonprofits. So eventually you get to the point where you're choosing the nonprofit, which is very important, but there's all that work that goes into that with the family and the individuals first. So in that way, it's not just this random sort of, willy-nilly matchmaking exercise of, oh, this nonprofit needs money, let me go find a donor. There's usually is this in line with what the family's looking for? And then on the nonprofit side, are you doing what you need to do to be ready for that most strategic level type thinker and funder so that you can go to them and feel like you have your data and your ducks in a row so that they feel like if they want to develop a long-term relationship with you, that's that's the one they want to hitch their wagon to, rather than feel like, gee, did I make the right choice? Is this nonprofit appropriate? And by the way, that does happen still with families. I've seen families giving away $1 million, and when I ask them some tough questions, they're like, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. And I say, well, you should know the answer to that. This is an important decision for you. And by the way, you're going to be giving away, from what I understand, another $100 million. So you probably want to have some criteria in place and know who you're matching your giving to and how, or whether or not it's appropriate. So anyway, a lot of thinking involved on both sides.
Yeah, it's very much a two-way street for sure.
Yeah, very much.
Now, Jeff had mentioned earlier on when we were getting together that there are some organizations that don't even have built a board yet. They're that far behind. And one other example that we've had, gents, is when I was working with a group and they were expecting the donorship for 700,000 coming in, and they got a call that it was frozen. It had nothing to do with their organization, but the freezing of the money meant, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And the executive who is running it goes to the board to talk about that. And the answer the board said is, I guess we're going to shut you down.
Wow.
She stayed very calm. She was trying to deal with this shock. And I said, no, don't worry about that. I'm going to introduce her to Rick so that Rick could give her some guidance on alternatives. And they have gone through that now and they're moving ahead. So understanding where to get the resource and the support in the positive way is so key in this matter. And
that's right.
Jeff, you're right in terms of the services to help with boards that don't understand what they don't understand. So you can help them and then get them qualified so that they can then work with Rick on the right matches, which is really why I think this combination of talent with all of these perspectives makes a huge difference. And with that in mind, I want to say thank you for your insights. And I would like anyone who's taking a look at this to feel free to reach out to any and all of us to talk about a specific instance that might be your need for help. We're here to do it, right? So Thank you. Thank you.